There's three major shifts that the vast majority of you are going through right now, and the vast majority of managers, executives, and anyone leading a team are going through. The first shift is, even if you've worked from home previously, there's a high degree of likelihood that you've co-located with a portion of your team. Even if some of your team was remote, you had a portion of your team that you co-located with a couple of days a week. So you could walk out, you could brief them on a meeting that you just had, you could put your hand on somebody, you could ask them to work on something, you could go into your office or back to your cubicle, come back out 10 minutes later, ask them how they're doing, if they need any help, support. And now all of us, including our team members who might have been used to co-locating, right? Managers maybe work from home more than the team members that are co-locating. Everyone now is forced to work from home. And that's a massive change. And it might not feel like a massive change, but then if you pile on to that the other two massive changes that you're supporting at the same time, the first one being there's a high degree of likelihood that the vast majority of your businesses are pivoting right now to respond to what's going on in the world. And in some cases, the third is that you're trying to figure out how to remain viable to contribute to business continuity. And so here you are, the leader of a team. Everybody's looking to you for the answers. How do we go forward? How do we do this? How do we work from home? And I don't have all the answers, but I am going to share a model that has been proven to effectively allow managers, executives, team leaders to lead their teams 100% remotely. And the idea is to take that one massive change off your plate. So as I go through this, I'm hoping there's a couple of things that happen. The first thing is that some of you are like, hey, that's what I've been doing. That's totally what I was going to do. And in that validation, I've taken the pressure off. You were able to get some validation to what you were doing and move forward. And that should take the stress and the pressure off and allow you to focus on what's probably most important right now, which is creating value in your business, pivoting your team, leading business continuity, and not trying to figure out how to lead a team from home. And the other intention is that hopefully some of you are like, you know what, I've really never managed a team from home, or I've been a product owner in an agile environment for the last 8 years. I've been co-located. This now is so foreign to me that I got a tip, I got a technique that could be useful tomorrow in my business. That's really the frame for this presentation. There's three massive changes that you guys are all responsible for leading people through, and I want to take the pressure of one of them off your shoulders. For those of you that are not familiar with 120 VC, I think that's important to cover, and I'll cover that briefly. It's who we are and what we've done for the last 20 years that uniquely positions us to give advice on how to effectively manage a team from home. So we've been around 20 years. We are a transformational leadership services firm. We've been managing global transformational initiatives for companies like Trader Joe's, Riot, T-Mobile, Okta, NBC Universal, Blizzard Entertainment for the last 20 years. McKinsey performed a study that found on average, large IT projects come in 45% over budget. That's $450,000 over for every $1 million of spend. They come in 7%, on average, 7% late and deliver 56% less value than originally anticipated. In the last 20 years on some of these large, complex global initiatives, 120 VC has delivered 98% of their projects on time, on budget, with near a 100% mass market, depending on the audience, or user adoption on day one. We've done this with zero authority. We go in as the consultant. We bring together teams. We don't bring our vendor management team. We don't bring our CRM team. We don't bring our ERP team. We just provide the leadership, the change leadership, the product management. We pull together our customers' teams. We pull together the teams of the vendors into one team. We create one plan. And we have been able to successfully deliver these projects with a high degree of success. And to be totally honest with you, the vast majority of the time, I've done that from this office, which is my home. So as far as leading teams from home, I feel like I have a few things that I know for sure work. Now, again, I'm going to go over a model that works. It's not the only model that works. My intention today isn't to say, here is the end-all, be-all for being effective at leading or managing teams from home, but it is a way that has worked for us. And again, I'd love your feedback when this is over. Please send me an email, ask me questions. So for those of you that don't know, 120 VC is in the get it done business. We're outcome obsessed. and that's why we felt we should pull something together to help, again, alleviate the pressure that some of you might be feeling in supporting your companies and learning how to effectively lead a team from home. So hopefully this is validating for the majority of you. All right, I'm going to start out with something that's really important to me, which is leadership. And why this is important in this context is that there's a big difference between management, where managers dictate outcomes, right? And leaders that help their team members facilitate their own roadmap to a shared goal. And don't get me wrong, a manager can, instead of using their authority, use their influence, which is leadership. However, in contexts where you're co-located with somebody or a team of people, often you're accidentally using your authority because you have it. If you walk out of your office and you ask somebody to stop what they're doing and work on something nicest way possible, you could ask them, do they have time? You can ask them, does this impact their priorities? Ultimately, no matter how cool you are, and I can tell you this because I keep thinking, I feel like I'm so trustworthy, but at the end of the day, people don't forget that, I'm the founder of this company, no matter how cool or approachable or how safe I make them feel. And so when I walk out and I say, do you have time to work on something? They want to say yes. They want to say yes, even if they respect me, right? They want to say yes, and because that authority, it's there. And so what happens is you walk out, you ask them if they have time to work on something, they drop what they're doing, they work on it for you, you walk into your office. Now here's the thing, they're bombarded by phone calls, they're probably bombarded by emails, they're bombarded by people swinging by their desk, but you've asked them to do something, so they're going to set those boundaries, okay? Because whether conscious or not, they know that you might step out of your office in 10 or 15 minutes and swing by their desk and say, how's it going? Do you need some help? Do you have any questions? And they don't want to say to you, you know what, Jay, I know I told you I'd make this a priority, but I haven't had a chance to focus on this in the last 15 minutes. No. However, now they're home and you're home, and you might leave a meeting and you might want to call me up and say, hey, Jay, can you drop what you're doing and work on this? But you get my voicemail. Right? I've got emails coming in, right? You're going to text me. I'm probably going to say to somebody, I got to get off the phone. I'm going to get to you, but I am not as readily available to you as I have been in the past. And so what you're going to have to establish is a cadence. So leading a team from home I'm not going to say that it's harder than leading a team on premise or when you're co-located, but it does require a lot more discipline, a lot more intentionality, and just knowing that you do still have authority, but there is distance. It's harder. People can become distracted. And so therefore the commitments that you can foster where they actively come up with the approach they're going to take to accomplish the expectations that you as their manager or executive or leader set, the higher priority they're going to give it, because when they decide how it's going to be done, they have a higher degree of confidence in it. They're much more likely to execute it. And so today I'm going to talk about a cadence. I'm going to talk about meetings. I'm going to talk about super boring stuff, but I'm also going to talk about human nature and how we as leaders can bring that into play to ensure that we can achieve the outcomes necessary, and even in this age of work from home, create some velocity around achieving our goals. So let's talk about what a leader does. First, no one hires a leader because they want their organization to be the same in 6 months or a year. Leadership is fundamentally about change, and change is about people. Strong leadership is necessary when change is imminent or desired, and that's where we're at. Nobody was like, hey, work from home, that'd be novel, let's do it to create some economic benefits. No, literally, it's not safe for us to do anything else but work from home. And so here you are. There is imminent change happening all around us. As I've mentioned before, you have to learn how to lead a team effectively from home. You have to ensure that you're creating value for your business and probably pivot your team from one business direction to another business direction. Everybody right now is reflecting on, if not completely restructuring their near-term tactical and strategic plans, and everybody's counting on you to lead that forward. All right, so what I want you guys to think of is that, hey, it's easy to be an effective leader when times are good, right? It's much more critical to be an effective leader and harder to be an effective leader when leadership is absolutely necessary, and that's when change is imminent or desired. In this case, we're talking about imminent change. So let's talk about a couple of things that leaders do and don't, right? So leaders don't dictate outcomes. They help their team members focus on what can be done versus what can't be done. So sure, you guys are going to set the expectations. You're going to say, team, I've just come from the executive suite. We have to work on these 5 things. Your team is immediately going to start identifying all of the obstacles. They're going to want to discuss priorities. They're going to have a million questions. Their focus, especially in this time of daunting change, is to focus on what can't be done versus what can't be done. And this is where strong leadership comes into play. You guys are going to have to help them focus on what can be done. That's what every conversation should be about, is velocity, moving the needle, driving business forward, because there's never been a time where every minute counts. Every piece of productivity is critical, and maybe you guys came to this call today because you were feeling that pressure. Leaders help their team members prioritize their workload and run interference when anything threatens to distract them. And leaders sincerely care about the success of their team members. We focus on solutions. Our leadership style, what's the appropriate leadership style for the situation? Should I be highly collaborative? Should I trust it to them? Should I call the shot? All are appropriate depending on the use case. Coaching, mentoring in ways that enable team member success. So this is the frame that I'll be addressing all of the techniques and the cadences that I introduced to you guys today. And it's in that your authority has been marginalized because there's no chance of you swinging by their desk. There's a higher degree of people being distracted. It's going to be harder for you to get in touch with your team members, right? And so again, intentionality of purpose is important. Human connection in this time of work from home is critical. And if some of you are scratching your head thinking, well, that just got harder, I'm going to say, roger that. That's why I'm addressing it first. So for those of you that are at least my age, video conference killed the radio stars. The first slide, I hope you find that as funny as I do. I want to talk about the benefits of human interaction, but first I want to talk about how that works. So there was a scientist, his name was Merabian. He performed a study a long time ago, and what he found was that we communicate more from body language than we do voice tone modulation, or that we do even words. And there's a story that I like to tell that really illustrates this. And so a couple of years ago, I spent 27 days on a 27-foot boat with my wife and young children, I think at the time 5 and 7, halfway up the Inner Passage to Alaska. And now, by no means is a 27-foot boat small, but I can tell you that every single day that we were on that boat together as a family, we had a fantastic time, and the boat got smaller every day. So by the time we got home from that trip, 27 days later, we had stories, we were grateful, it was an amazing trip, but let's just say there were some of us in the family that weren't too eager to get back out on the boat. So I obviously went back to work on a Monday. The week goes by, it's Friday morning, I'm having coffee with my wife, Colleen, and I look over and I say to her, hey, would you like to take the boat to Blake Island this weekend? She looked at me, rolled her eyes, and said, sure. So those of you that are listening heard in my sure, no. You saw in my eye roll, no, but she said sure. And so I immediately said, you know what, I get it. You know, I could see that you probably don't want to go back on the boat this weekend. And so we had a lovely weekend hanging around the house, ordering takeout, doing nothing. What if I had gone to work, sent her a text message, and she had replied, sure? Well, I would have found myself that night on the boat with my family, not knowing that they were feeling suffocated, and the weekend probably would not have gone well. And so this is why it's okay to use words to accomplish super simple things, right? So if for example, I was preparing for this video conference today, and I text Jake a couple of times, hey, make sure that you're on a couple minutes before, I want to get prepared. Super simple request. I don't need to describe the why. I don't need to help him architect his own roadmap to how he's going to get on the call a couple minutes before to help me get prepared. Simple request, very little leadership required. As situations get more critical, like for example, I've got to help a client talk through a tricky situation that's going to be sensitive. I'm going to have to probably point out some things that they might not love. They're going to want to see that my body language is 100% caring, playing for them, empathetic. And so when I say, have you thought about this thing that they really don't want to think about, they're going to know I'm not being critical, that I'm there and that I'm playing for them. And so body language and face-to-face interaction work from home is possible. We're doing it right now. I'm going to go over a couple of tools at the end of this slide that you guys can utilize for little to no, and in some cases for free. But what I want to point out is where the vast majority of us have been ordered to work from home, which by the way makes it different psychologically. Work from home when you want to might even seem exciting. Work from home when you have to can feel restrictive. And again, you can't eliminate the human nature from anything. I mean, that's what makes the world go round. So recognizing that now is the time to have video conferences. Now is the time to encourage people to bring up their videos, right? To interact, because that will foster human connection, being able to see people's reactions. Again, working from home, the vast majority of the time, I do this all the time where I'll be on a call with a team member and they'll say yes to something, or they'll say no to something, and their body language contradicted them. And I'll say, hey, you know, you said yes, but your body said no. Let's talk about that. It makes me a more effective leader. And as a leader, this is really important. I think in the old school, in the command and control world, leadership was about controlling the outcome, or at least management was about controlling the outcome. Leadership is about facilitating or fostering expected outcomes. So if I've got a team member that says yes, they're going to accomplish something, but their body language communicates to me they're uncomfortable with it, that communicates to me, if I let this go 3 days, I might not get the outcome that I'm expecting, and I've lost 3 days. So me being open, me being able to see that they weren't 100% confident, continuing that conversation, asking questions, and we're going to talk about active listening on this call, asking questions to get to the root of why they might be uncomfortable might help us both get comfortable, more importantly, get aligned. So I know 3 days from now, I'm going to get the result that I expected. And more importantly, if I can't get there with this individual, get alignment, get comfortable, I can always go, you know what, that's cool. And I can ask somebody else to work on it, which will enable me to what? Get the expected outcome, right? So being able to have clear, open communication, which does require more than just text and email, right? The video really enables us to get to alignment faster if we're paying attention, because if we're paying attention, regardless of what people say, we'll know where they're at. This is where emotional intelligence comes in, really being able to be in tune through voice tone modulation and body language with where your team members are at allows you to get to alignment faster, which will allow you to achieve much more often the expected outcome. And that's what leadership, velocity, and agile is all about. So face-to-face communication is more intimate than text. I hope that that's come across today. Face-to-face communication enables faster alignment. Body language improves teamwork, but it also improves trust. He's not just saying I can trust him. I can see from his body language that I can trust him. When you are authentic as a leader and you're playing for your team members and they can see that in your body language, they're going to trust you much more deeply than they would if you're just the voice on the line, the person that they don't talk to very often, the person that is not conscious about fostering that human connection, right? So when you're the leader that's like, we're going to bring up that video, they might roll their eyes and be like, I don't like to be on video, Jay. But ultimately, subconsciously and over time, they're going to feel more connected to you, which means they're going to want to play for you just like you're playing for them, and you're going to get more effective, consistent, expected outcomes. Here's the other thing too. I've read study after study that when we're feeling stressed or fatigued or suffering from ADT, which is not a disorder, but sort of like a learned behavior, we're stressed and we're feeling stressed. One of the best ways to get unstressed is to go have a casual conversation with a colleague or go connect with another human being. So human connection also relieves stress, and we're going to feel much more connected if we can see the body language of the other person than if they are just a voice on the line or somebody responding to an email, which by the way is never immediate, right? You send an email and then you wait. Where's the connection? So a couple of tools that I've seen used effectively, if you've got Microsoft Office 365, Teams is included. So this is either an inexpensive add-on or a part of your existing subscription. Teams allows for video conferencing, document sharing, chat, and like I said, in some cases it's free with an O365 subscription. No, we are not peddling licenses, and I don't own stocks in, well, I do own stock in Zoom, but not G Suite or, not Google or Microsoft. The other thing I will recommend, if you're going to utilize Teams, don't use the web version. It doesn't work very well. Actually download it and install it on your workstation. It works pretty good. Zoom conference, which I'm utilizing today, I'm in love with. I own stock in. I think it's high quality. It's got a ton of tools, allows for breakouts, chats. You can record the meetings. Of the other video conference providers, WebEx, GoToMeeting. What I love about them is it's a low month-to-month subscription. So you can say, hey, we need to use it this month, and we'll cancel next month. The other providers want to lock you into a year deal, which is really sort of restrictive and non-agile. And then G Suite is free. It does require that everybody's got a Google login, that everybody's logged into Google. But if you're operating on a shoestring and you need to pull your team together, Hangouts, video conference, there's through Google Drive, document sharing, and chats, and it's completely free. Ready to lead imminent or desired change. I want to talk a little bit about how change works. And to do that, I'm going to introduce the Kolb experiential learning model. So another scientist, because I don't want you guys thinking that I've made any of this stuff up, another scientist named Kolb did a study on human beings learn, but changing is also learning, okay? So learning or change begins
with a concrete experience. I attend a webinar, I read an article, or I stub my toe. Then I have to stop and reflect on what I heard or read, or I will not learn, change, or grow.
I will not adopt any of these tools or techniques. I have to pause and reflect on the things that I heard. I then need to conceptualize how would I use them, right? And now I'm ready, right? I might decide, hey, the next time I find myself in a situation with a team member where they come to me and say, hey, here's a problem, what should I do? Instead of jumping to the rescue and not getting a good outcome, having the discipline, because I reflected on the not optimal outcome. I thought, how can I change this? My decision was the next time a team member comes to me and says, hey, I have this problem, what should I do? I'm gonna say to them, tell me what you think you should do. Tell me what you'd do if failure wasn't an option, and we'll go from there. And so I'm prepared for that active experiment. So the next time a team member walks into my office and says, Jay, I have this crisis, what should I do? I'm ready, and I say that. And then I have a new concrete experience, and then I'm gonna reflect again on how would that work? Did I get the outcome this time that I was looking for? Did I improve? And this is how we go from learning, adopting change, to mastering techniques, okay? And so your jobs right now as the manager, the executive, or the team leader, or just the leader, is to help your team members develop new habits. Because even if you've got some expertise at working from home and leading from home, it's not full time, and you're not used to having your entire team, or you probably wouldn't be on this call, working from home. And so your job really is the one to develop these cadence, the cadence of change, which means you're going to have to create some inflection points, right? So change requires repetitive planned effort over time. So first step is creating reoccurring inflection points. I'm going to recommend that you have a daily kickoff meeting with a set agenda. I'm going to talk about why you need to do that religiously, and you'll get bad results at first. Let me just tell you, it's not going to go right at first. People aren't going to be like, oh, I get it. You want to have this meeting. This is the agenda. You want us to show up prepared. And show up prepared. Change doesn't work like that. So I want to level set your expectations that when it doesn't go well at first, don't abandon it, because that abandoning it will make sure that you never see the change that you want to see. Organizations are currently optimized for the results that you're getting. If you want to get different results, you have to change something. In this situation, something has been changed for you, and you need to develop new habits around working effectively in this new environment. And so you have to be consistent about the change you want to see, and know that it's not going to go well at first, and don't abandon it, right? If you don't abandon the things that I'm going to tell you to do, they will work out effectively for you, I promise. The only time I've ever seen these things not work is when people abandon them. Okay, so I'm going to recommend you have a daily kickoff meeting. Some of you might want to call that a stand-up, depending on how agile you are, but I didn't want to turn off the enterprise folks or the operations folks. Or those that are just vehemently against Agile. And then we're going to talk about getting updates, all right? You're going to block, so creating these inflection points over time will force first you to block time to prepare. So let's say you schedule a daily kickoff meeting. If you show up without spending some time preparing for that daily kickoff meeting, you won't be successful, because this new kickoff meeting and the agenda, it's new for you. It's going to take you some time, maybe a couple of weeks, to figure out like how you want to go about it. You know, which questions do you want to ask? Which terminology do you want to use? How do you want to be effective? All right. So you're going to have to take some time to prepare. You're going to schedule it. You're going to think through the agenda. And then the very first day before you have this meeting, you're going to take time to prepare, which might even cause you to think, ooh, I probably want to modify the agenda a little bit tomorrow. And again, after you have the meeting, you're going to want to take time to reflect. How did that go? Do I want to change anything? Abstract conceptualization. Prepare yourself for an active experiment. Then conduct the meeting the next day, which leads to another concrete experience, right? So at a minimum, you're going to block time to prepare. What will happen over time is your team members will absolutely show up unprepared day one, probably day two. By day 3 and 4, they're going to start feeling a little bad about it. Okay, because they'll be able to see in front of their own teammates and you every day that it's obvious that they're unprepared. And so just by having this open, transparent meeting, people will start to take time to prepare. Preparation forces inflection in the learning cycle. And again, I cannot stress how important discipline, consistent repetition over time will lead to new habits and better results. Now, if you're sitting on this call thinking, I don't have time for this shit, I want to be clear with you. If you're too busy to help your team change, they won't. You will not get different results. So don't call me in a month and be like, that thing you told me didn't work, because I'm going to ask you, what did you do? If you're like, basically like, I delegated it. It felt like too much leading my team through an agenda, keeping up with a meeting. I asked the admin to take care of it. It won't work. This needs to be led by the leader, by you. Change and new habits needs to be led by the leadership. Establishing a cadence for communication. So I'm going to recommend 3 types of communication. I'm going to remind you that we at 120 VC believe 100% that we communicate to lead. So fundamentally what that means is that as a leader, if I communicate to somebody that we need this to be the priority, we need to pivot, and I don't take the time to ask them what they're hearing, what their planned next steps are, why they think it's important to the business. I just look at them and say, do you understand? And they say, yep. Well, sure, they understand something, but we've all experienced that moment where we've asked that question. They said yes, they go away, and 3 days later they come back and what they've delivered is not what we expected. That's really on us, the leader. We can't even write that off as miscommunication. I'm going to recommend you write it off as poor leadership. Because at the end of the day, we're responsible for ensuring that team members are set up for success and ensuring that they are capable of delivering expected outcomes. So we communicate to lead. So don't call it a miscommunication. Don't say it was poor communication. Say that it was a failure to lead. Own that and be a better leader by messaging and then getting clarity on what's being heard. Back to 3 types of meetings, I'm going to recommend a daily kickoff or a daily stand-up. I'm going to tell you that you have to conduct this rain or shine. I'm going to talk about a backlog in a minute, so we don't have to get too deep in this. This could be an Excel worksheet that you've posted somewhere that everybody can access on a OneDrive, in Teams. But ultimately, in this meeting, there's only one purpose for this meeting, and that's for people to talk about the progress they made on what they committed to yesterday, what they're committing to accomplish today, and any blockers or help that they need. Those things ideally are logged by them. They're managing their tasks in this Excel worksheet or on this backlog or in G or wherever it is, but that's not going to happen on day one. So I'm definitely going to talk you through some incremental baby steps that you guys are going to take as the leader that starts out. As I mentioned, we're going to take some baby steps, and baby steps require what? Babysitting, okay? But again, you're helping your team members baby step toward maturity, and you're going to go slow at first to create velocity, and ultimately you will go fast. Because if you, as a leader and as a team, can adopt some of these habits, you will end up much more efficient than you were when it was easy to be lackadaisical because you're on-prem, you could walk out, you didn't have to be that intentional, right? This level of intentionality will not only serve you from a work-from-home perspective, but if you take it back into the office, it'll be amazing at the productivity increase that you guys are going to see. So again, you want to open the scoreboard, right? And in there should be logged their stuff. The stuff they said they were going to work on yesterday, the stuff that they're committing to working on today. And as they're providing an update, you as the leader are going to want to as they're providing an update on what they did yesterday, you're going to look at what they committed to. And your job is just to be the scoreboard, right? The mirror, the sounding board. Well, hey, Okay, great. You got those things accomplished. I appreciate it. We talked about these things. What happened to those and how are these things a higher priority? You're going to ask this inquisitively and curiously, not admonishingly. This is not about shame. This isn't about being the manager. This isn't about being the boss. This is, again, helping people work on what they committed to, because at the time that they committed to it, they thought it was the highest priority. And if something shifts and they don't get you back in the loop or work as a team, they're not playing as a team, right? You're not going to get expected outcomes. And here's the deal. High performing sports teams, the way that they work together as a team often achieve what? Expected outcomes. So it's not about micromanagement. It's about, hey, I got new information, I shifted, or I got a call, I thought it was a higher priority. Ideally, they bring that back to the team, and they can do that through chat, they can do that through email, they can call you. But what you want to accomplish is this cadence where people are committing to the highest priority work for the moment, and that they're effectively, and that you're enabling that they're achieving that, and that you guys are all on the same page, because there are often on a team a high level of interdependencies between players. So if you've got one team member that's committing to things and then doing other things, it's highly likely that that's throwing a monkey wrench in what the other team members are doing. And again, they're not all co-located on the same floor, where they're used to, when something changes, standing up and looking over the cubicle and being like, hey, Jake, can I get your time for a second? This just changed. No, they're working from home, and that's going to feel like an obstacle. Picking up the phone and vetting it with you is going to feel like an obstacle to them. And if you're thinking, that's BS, that shouldn't be hard, that should be really easy. If any of you have ever hit the snooze button, you've succumbed, right? You've succumbed to that tension of it's just hard. And some people might feel like it's hard to pick up the phone. Some people might feel like it's so much easier just to make the decision, okay? And so you acknowledge that and use this meeting to bring them back and work as the coach to create this high functioning unit. So your agenda doesn't have to be exactly this. It's a suggested agenda. But again, the cadence is really simple. Every team member is going to communicate to each other what I accomplished based on what I committed to yesterday, what I plan to accomplish today, any blockers or help that I need. They'll have a collaborative discussion, who needs to do what. Outside of that, ad hoc meetings might get scheduled for them to collaborate on things together. So that's where the ad hoc meetings come into play. So moving on from the daily kickoff to daily updates. This is definitely an inflection point that is intended to help develop new habits and new behavior. So what you're going to ask your team to do is publish a very, very, very short note to the team, to each of you on your team every day. And we call it a daily status report at 120 VC. It's really simple. Ours includes 3 gratitudes. Because it's really good for people to reflect on what they're grateful in a day, right? It reduces stress, increases happiness, and our brains at positive are 30% more effective than at negative, neutral, or stress, but I'm not going to get into that. So at a minimum, have them publish what they accomplished. Attending a meeting is an accomplishment, guys. It's not, right? Specific accomplishments. I attended a meeting and I got sign off on this. Accomplishments are the things that move our initiatives forward or move our commitments on the backlog closer to completion. So what did they accomplish in a day? It's not going to be like 10 things, right? Real accomplishments, 1, 2, 3 is incredible, right? Here's what I accomplished. And then they're going to take time to think through, what do I need to accomplish tomorrow? And then what blockers or help they need, and they're going to publish it. And so therefore you guys, as managers or leaders, can get up in the morning, get your cup of coffee, read through, and be prepared for your stand-up. And here's what's going to happen. They've now prepared themselves to log these things in the backlog, right? So so they'll struggle to send these. You're going to have to keep on it. Hey, I didn't get your daily update yesterday, right? Some team members will adopt right away, which will encourage the other team members to adopt. But the idea is, at the end of the day, finish up. Here's what I accomplished. Let everybody know. Here's what I'm planning to do tomorrow. It would be really easy for them to then log it in the backlog. They won't. I want to be clear, right? First, you're going to get the daily updates. Then they'll start logging it, but they'll be developing that muscle, all right? They'll start thinking in terms of, what did I accomplish? What's a real accomplishment? What did I accomplish today? What do I need to accomplish tomorrow? It'll take them 20 minutes at first. By the time they're masters of this, it'll take 5-10 minutes every day. And they're literally then prepared for the morning to collaborate as a team and be productive, right? So this helps develop good, solid habits. You have to be religious about it. This helps develop good, solid habits. All of this fosters inner team communication and we communicate to lead. Outside of these communications, somebody might read something in this and say, you know what, I need to set up a meeting with you to work on this. So really, these two communication modes are going to contribute to the scheduling of ad hoc meetings. And I'm sure that you guys all do that using whatever communication or calendaring tool that you have in your organizations, and you don't need any advice on that. So moving on from the types of communications that I'm recommending, and then I want to go into meetings are where we lead. There are studies done that indicate that billions of dollars a year are wasted on meetings that don't accomplish anything. And not only is that terrible, but really the thing that people fail to realize is that meetings are a competition. It's highly unlikely that any of you have team members that aren't serving other stakeholders, all right? And ultimately, now that they work from home, it's really easy for them to make excuses as to why they don't attend your meeting, because you can't see that they're just sitting at your desk and they didn't want to go, right? So I cannot tell you the excuses that will come up that you won't be able to say anything about. And so you need to recognize that you want people to attend your meetings to get them to attend your meetings more consistently than anybody else's meetings. And those of you that are project managers and don't have any direct reports that are leading matrix teams, this is even more critical for you. You need to recognize that people are not motivated by paycheck. Right? As long as they're getting paid enough money to take money off the table, what motivates in the workplace is mastery, autonomy, and purpose. Okay? And so if you invite people to a meeting and don't accomplish anything, they will judge you. And I can prove this. So every single one of you have walked out of a meeting recently that you felt was a waste of your time. I know it's true. And if I asked you guys to tell me how you felt about that, at least some of you would say frustrated. Nobody would say pumped, super stoked. I'm so happy that I got paid for them to waste my time. But here's the important thing that proves mastery, autonomy, and purpose is more important than money, because every single one of you guys got paid to be in that meeting, and you were frustrated anyway, and you felt like your time was wasted. So the key to ensuring that meetings are productive is that you create an agenda, right? And part of creating that agenda isn't so your team members can read it and be prepared. It's literally so you think through the outcomes that you need to move your initiatives forward as aggressively as possible. And especially in an environment where it's hard to get team members together in today, right? The people that you need might not be available at the same time for a week. You literally need to think, okay, what is it do I need? Who do I need? Who are the critical people to make the decisions or have the subject matter expertise? What is it that I need to accomplish to move my initiative forward, move my team forward? And then once you've got those, think of agenda items as outcomes, necessary outcomes. And these are for ad hoc meetings, because for your daily stand-up, you're going to have the same agenda every day, okay? But for ad hoc meetings, you need to think, what is it that I need to be true at the end of the meeting? And frame agenda items backward from that. So agenda items really should be planned accomplishments. Then you need to think, who am I going to assign to address this? Who has the authority? Who has the subject matter expertise? The authority to make the decision. Who has the subject matter expertise to make the decision? And then this is the critical part that most everybody leaves out. Model how long you think it's going to take to accomplish that agenda item. I cannot tell you how often I see people send out a meeting invite that's got an agenda, 5 items. We wait a week to have the meeting. We participate in the meeting. We accomplish 3. There's 2 remaining. We literally have to wait a week to have the next meeting, because that's our next availability at the same time. However, if the chair of that meeting had taken time to model out the duration, they might have known that it would require 2 meetings to accomplish that. And so they would have put 3 agenda items out in an hour meeting a week from now, and 2 agenda items out in a meeting invite for a week and 1 day. And so a little planning, modeling out the duration, contributes to getting these things accomplished sooner than if you just waited, found out you didn't accomplish anything. Because that's the other thing too. If you conduct a meeting that doesn't accomplish things, people are booked, triple booked in meetings. They just are not going to prioritize your meeting. Back to meetings are a competition. But even if you only accomplish a portion of that, they're still going to feel like, were we as productive as we could have been? So the manager or executive or leader that really prepares themselves to lead with an agenda, prepares their team members to participate with an agenda, can do several things. 1, ensure that team members feel masterful, that they've accomplished something. And then they're going to prioritize your meetings. 2, as you're walking from one meeting to the next meeting, you pull up that agenda, and all that planning that you did that might have taken you 20, 30, 40 minutes, in 30 seconds is fresh, is present, and you're prepared to lead. Couple of things that are really important. You need to start meetings on time, finish meetings on time, lead participants through the discussion of each agenda item. Don't skip around. Lead them through, finish, and then when you've got an agreement or a decision that's been made, ask them, here's what I've captured. Is this correct? And if they nod, no, get them to say, yes, it's correct, or yes, I agree. Because when they do that, their brain will produce a shot of dopamine, dopamine being one of the 4 chemicals produced by the human body that makes us feel happy, but it also opens up our long-term learning centers and memory. And so in that meeting, if you get them to acknowledge out loud with yes, they'll get a hit of dopamine, they'll feel good. Meetings are a competition, they'll feel productive. And then when they leave that meeting and go to another meeting and make commitments, and then leave that meeting and go to another meeting and make commitments, and leave that meeting and go to another meeting and make commitments, you've ensured that there's a higher degree of likelihood they're going to remember the commitment they made to you because you trick their brain into producing dopamine, which will help them remember in addition to making them feel good. You're going to want to document tangents that always come up for future meetings, which will lead to ad hoc meetings. Do not stray from the agenda. The key is to make sure you are productive and these people leave feeling productive. At the end of the meeting, you've covered each agenda item. At the completion of each agenda item, you've gotten people to acknowledge the agreement or the commitment, and now you're going to go through all of it. The agreement, the commitment, producing, again, dopamine, ensuring that when they walk out, that they're feeling masterful and that you will always win the meeting competition. They're going to come to yours. Ensuring alignment is all about active listening. So I'm sure that the vast majority of you have heard that there's this thing called active listening, and it's a little bit different than what we've been taught good listening is. So the vast majority of us have been taught that good listening is making eye contact, nodding, don't interrupt. Let them go on for as long as they need to go on, just nod and don't interrupt. Well, that's actually passive listening, and it doesn't contribute as beneficially to the connection or to alignment as active listening. A couple of scenarios where active listening would be important. I, as a leader, say, here are the priorities, which is my role. There's a couple of team members who should obviously take ownership of those priorities based on their subject matter expertise. And so I'm going to say, hey, I feel like, this sort of fits into your wheelhouse. Can I count on you to work on this? I get a yes. Cool. Then I'm going to say, okay, based on what I, kind of what I just rolled out, will you walk me through your immediate next steps, how you feel like this is beneficial to the business? Just kind of run me back through what you took away. Now I'm listening. All right. They're running me back through. If I had just asked, do they have it, and let them walk away, that would be an egregious failure of leadership, right? Because I don't know what they understood, right? I have no idea what the outcome is going to be, and my job is to ensure alignment. So I'm going to ask them a couple of questions, and as they start talking, I'll reflect back to them, because now they're talking about the how, right? Like what they're going to do. And I'll say, okay, so you said you're going to do this. Is this because of this? Like I'm trying to understand. I'm exploring what they're communicating to me curiously. I'm reflecting it back. And here's what's happening. They're going to say, yes, that's what I'm saying. Or they're going to say, no, that's not what I'm saying. And if I got it wrong, right, they'll describe something. Ultimately, what's happening is I'm getting on the same page as them. Okay. I'm also listening because if what they're describing doesn't sound like I'm going to get the outcome that I was hoping for, we're not on the same page. What they're describing is predictive of the outcome that will get realized. It's not semantics. And so if they start saying that they're going to accomplish this priority that I described in a way that doesn't sound like I'll get the results that I'm looking for, I might say, well, I'm going to be honest, I don't understand. I feel like if you do that, this will happen. And then I always throw this in. What am I missing? Because I'm going to assume it's not them that doesn't get it. It's me that doesn't get it. I'm just the executive. I'm the dumbest person in the room, right? The idea is that they won't become defensive. If I make it super clear that I'm trying to explore what I'm missing, right? If what they're describing doesn't get us where we need to go, right? I want to state that. I want to say, I don't see how that's going to get us there. Here's what I'm seeing. What am I missing? Right? And here's what will happen. Through this back and forth of the conversation, I'll either get information that I didn't have because I was missing something, and now I'm good. I'm like, cool. I totally understand how what you're going to do will accomplish this goal. We can high five. High fives produce oxytocin, which is another feel-good chemical. So I'm going to high five them, and I know 3 days from now, we were clear, we were aligned, I'm going to get the expected outcome. All right, so that's one area where reflecting asking clarifying questions. So I've got here in the active listening toolbox reflecting, asking open-ended questions, clarifying, right? Or even summarizing, here's my understanding, but I don't see how that's going to lead there. Now, active listening comes into play in other scenarios where there is potential conflict, right? Or there's a problem-solving discussion that you as the leader need to propose. And so as people are working through, right, like how they're feeling, like I always ask, how do you feel about this? Or how do you see this benefits the business? If they anywhere in there are like, I don't see it, or I think this is going to be damaging, I want to encourage this discussion, because the more information, the more that we can unpack, the closer to the alignment we're going to get. And so I want to make this safe by empathizing, right? So just because what they're saying doesn't fit me, like, you know, I might say, hey, we've got to cut all activities related to this because we've got to pivot here. And then a team member might start making the case that it's really important that we hold on to something over here. And I might think, in my judgmental state of mind, they don't get it. Well, that's not helpful to the conversation. That's not helpful in team alignment. And really, that's me playing for me and not my team member. And so I'm going to suspend that judgment, and I'm going to try to, you know, and I'm going to think to myself, well, you know, they're thinking optimistically. So I'm going to explore why they think that and how they feel we can accomplish both with limited time or limited budget. And once I've explored it, and this is the key to active listening and ensuring alignment, if we've explored it, 9 times out of 10, we're going to just naturally end up on the same page, because we'll have the same information and we'll both feel like the best thing to do for the business 9 times out of 10 is aligned. Sometimes as the leader, you're going to have to say, you know what, I totally understand that you see it this way. I feel like we've talked about this, you know, and we just can't get to the same page. I'm going to have to make a call. And even though I know that you disagree, can I count on you to commit? Because you've heard them, you've taken the time to explore with them. They know you care about their opinion. They're going to trust that you're making the best call for the organization, and they're going to commit. And now I'm going to move on to cultivating good commitments. And this is really important. I want you guys to think about cultivating commitments from a team member as, 1, fundamentally a leader's job. 2, there's an art to this. And so good commitments are public, they're active, they're voluntary, explicit, and mission-based. Public meaning when people make commitments in public, they're much more likely to remember that commitment because they anchor it to multiple people in a public setting. And so have you guys ever committed something to somebody and then walked out of that meeting and went to another meeting and went to another meeting and went to another meeting and then totally forgot? And what you remembered because you were walking down the hallway and you saw them and you were like, oh geez, that's right, I told Todd I would do that thing. And you look up and you're like, hey, I'm going to get you that thing. I'm still working on it. You've all done it. You know you've done it. That's anchoring. So the more people that you can anchor a commitment to that you might see, interact with on a conference call or a video call in a day, the more likely you are to remember that commitment. Although trying to remember a commitment is terrible. We all know logging them in the backlog is probably best. Active is that active listening piece that I just went through with you, right? Don't assume that they understand. Don't assume that they're clear. As a leader, you need to make sure that they're clear and actively craft the commitment. Lay out the expectation, jump right into active listening, ask them what they heard, what their initial next steps are, what they feel about it, right? Facilitate that active commitment. Voluntary, you can't count on yes if no is not an option. I'm going to say it again. We're working toward accomplishing predictability. If your team members don't feel like they can say no, and nobody's going to say no, but I don't feel like I can get to that, I have too much, I need something. We're going to talk about no in the next slide. But if no is not an option, they'll say yes all the time. For those of you that are on the line right now thinking, God, I get yes all the time, but they don't always deliver, right? It's always, oh, I couldn't get to that. This other thing was a priority. Remember, it's about expected outcomes. And so one of the ways to peel that onion, sure, it's true, there's probably too many number one priorities. But people don't like to say no, even if you make it safe to say no. So one of the paradigms that I like to introduce into environments is that no is a perfectly acceptable answer. Like say no. Say no, dig in, say no, because if I can count on your no, I'll just ask somebody else to do it. And I'll get an expected outcome. Okay? Explicit, what, by, when. Who, what, by, when. Here's a great story. My dad has visited me several times over the last couple of months, and we camp together. And so he's carrying around this firewood in the back of his truck. My kids like to do s'mores, and so we do a campfire in the backyard, and especially if my dad's over, we'll do a campfire in the backyard, and we'll, before dinner, and we'll roast s'mores. And no more than the last 4 times we've been sitting out there, my dad has lifted Colleen and I and said, we really should grab that firewood out of the back of my truck. I'm not going to use it. And then he leaves. He doesn't go get it. He leaves. And my wife and I just recently laughed because here's what I think is happening. He says, we really should get the firewood out of the back of the truck. I'm thinking he's going to go get it, like it's in the back of his truck. He's thinking one of us is going to go get it. And because there's no explicit commitment, nobody gets it, and he drives home with it every time. Mission-based. If you can tie it to why it's important to the company, why it's important to the company's mission, why it's important to a team's mission, why it's important to individuals on the team, people are going to be more committed to it. More importantly, if they understand the bigger picture, when they encounter an obstacle, they can pivot without coming back to you and saying, what should I do? Right? So the more they can understand how it contributes to the business, the more capable they are of engaging their IQ and pivoting. All right. So committed responses. So when facilitating or fostering good commitments, there's 4 responses that should be more than acceptable. Yes is obvious. We love to hear that. Yes, but make sure it's a real yes, and not a yes because they don't feel like they don't feel like they can say no, or they don't feel comfortable saying no. Promise to respond. Hey, you know what? Wow, that's new information, Jay. I get it. Here's what I understand. Here's what I would do. I've got these 5 things. Let me go check with my team, and I'll get back to you tomorrow. So it's the promise to promise. And then there's even the counteroffer. Hey, Jay, I hear you. You need it by Thursday. I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, because you might not know what's on their plate, right? I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. Can I get it to you on Friday? And then I get to decide, do I still need it on Thursday, in which case I can ask somebody else? Or do I really need this person to work on it? Their priorities are solid. Yeah, I can wait until Friday. Perfect. And so really a no is I don't know how to do that. I don't really want to do that. Like, I used to be a business analyst, and now you're asking me to be the product owner. I really just want to be a business analyst. No, because here's the thing. If they don't feel like they can say no to that promotion, you're not going to get the results that you're looking for in the product owner, right? So there are situations where like no should feel comfortable. Now, yeah, people should be tactful with the no. But a no should be an option, or you can't count on yes. And a lot of no's, though, manifest in the promise to respond or the counteroffer. Now, I can't get it to you by Thursday, but how about Friday? That really is a soft no. So committed. There you have committed responses, and then scoreboard. All right. So there's 2 things that I'm going to propose that you guys think about as scoreboards. I'm going to propose that you think of meeting notes as a scoreboard, and that you think of a backlog or just a list of tasks that I'm calling a backlog as a scoreboard. David Allen, who wrote a book called Getting Things Done, which was about individual process for ensuring that you're as efficient as possible in managing your time and your output, is famously quoted for saying your mind is for having ideas, not holding them. And so for any of you, and I know it's probably the vast majority of you, that have ever woken up in the middle of the night going, oh my gosh, I have to remember to do this, and didn't immediately write it down, you either laid there, oh my gosh, like trying to go back to sleep, and you couldn't because you're kind of afraid that you're going to forget it. You don't want to remember it. It's causing stress for you, or you fall back asleep and 5 minutes later you wake up. However, the second you take time to write it down, you've now closed the loop and you sleep like a baby, right? And so those of you that are trying to remember all of the things that you need to do, that are hoping your team members remember their commitments, right, are only inducing stress and setting yourself up to fail. So the first scoreboard is, hey, now you've had this super productive meeting, okay? And so you're going to publish meeting notes, right? And meeting notes should be barely sufficient, right? What we capture is just, hey, we as a group with the right people in the meeting, right? The people that had the authority or the subject matter to make the decision or commit to the work, agreed to these things. If we've encountered blockers to moving things forward, we've assigned them to somebody to eliminate, right? And then any task assignments to move us forward, right? So just agreements, blockers with somebody assigned, what, by, when, right? Explicit, and task assignments with who, what, by, when. I'm not going to get into the difference between an agreement and a task. The simple model is you don't have to list them in both places or your notes will be too long and people won't read them. If you can assign a date and a time that it can be accomplished, it's a task, not an agreement. An agreement is more, we're going to move from QBRs to OKRs. We're going to stop using Microsoft Project in favor of Smartsheet. That may be a whole initiative those two are whole initiatives that need to be planned, right? So we've agreed to do these things that will be planned out and become tasks in a future meeting. My recommendation is always publish these notes within 30 minutes because you get them out there to everybody, right? So you've gotten them all to acknowledge the commitments in the meeting, dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. Now you've put the notes out there. And so here's what's going to happen. They're going to go to meeting, make commitments. They're going to go to another meeting, make commitments. They're going to go to another meeting and make commitments. And at some point, they're going to be really bored in one of these meetings and they're going to open your meeting notes. And they're going to be like, oh, that's right. Commitment, 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 commitment. Now, if they're disciplined, and a few of them will, they'll take their commitments and put them in the backlog. At a minimum, over time, this will start happening, right? But here's what's going to happen. You're going to publish these minutes, and then you're going to copy the task assignments and the blockers, anything that's got a person assigned and a date, into the backlog, okay? So you've now published the minute. You facilitated a good meeting. You've got good commitments. You publish the meeting notes. They're out there. You've enabled your team to be self-accountable. You've literally done everything you can to achieve an expected outcome. And again, if you're thinking, that's admin work to publish notes. Okay, but those commitments were made to you. You're the one that facilitated the conversation, right? You are the leader. This isn't admin work. This is actually leadership work, setting your team members up to be as successful as possible, because holding people accountability really is, after you've together not gotten an expected outcome, shaming them after the fact. That just shuts people down. Accountability really, as a leader, is setting them up to be self-accountable from the beginning. And if you think through everything that I've presented to you today, that really is how we as leaders set team members up to be self-accountable. And then we're just the sounding board. Hey, oh, wait, we didn't get the outcome that we were looking for. How can we do better next time? Or, hey, you committed to doing this, and you didn't. What am I missing? Right? These are their commitments. So the roadmap, how to get there, defined by them. We trust what we say more than what anybody else says. You've set them up to be accountable. You've taken the notes. You've published the notes. You took 120 extra seconds and put the commitments in the backlog. So then when you have your meeting every morning, there's going to be the things that hopefully they're logging that they're planning to, that they were planning to accomplish yesterday, what they're planning to accomplish today, plus these things that they're committing to in the ad hoc meetings that should move into the, hey, you know what, I should probably pull something from the backlog into today because I committed to doing it. So literally all of their tasks end up listed there over time. So I want to go back to using a backlog is also super useful in conditioning your team toward this change. And this is your job, helping them change. So remember, change takes time and baby steps are gold. So the daily kickoff meeting conditions team members to use the backlog, right? So they're going to log tasks. You're going to log tasks and blockers when publishing meeting notes. So they make it in there. Every day when you start this meeting, you're going to open the backlog and you're just going to have it there. And as team members are talking about what they said they'd accomplish, and what they're planning to accomplish, you're going to be reflecting that back just in your mind. Is that what they said that they were going to do? Right? And if it's not, you can help facilitate how we get back on track. Then there's this whole backlog of stuff that's coming out of the ad hoc meetings. And you can, if they don't say, oh, this is going to be my priority for today, you might point out, well, hey, you know, 3 days ago, you committed this, it's going to be due tomorrow. Is there a reason that, this isn't a priority over these things? You're the facilitator, not the shamer, right? You're helping them stay on track as opposed to being behind it, right? And only catching it after they've gotten off track or you've got an unexpected outcome. And so this this religion around hosting this meeting is going to condition your team members to start thinking this way. All right, every day I need to make a commitment at the end of the day in my daily update or my daily status report. You want them to go into the backlog and look at what they've committed and what's due, and that then be their commitment. Okay, and then that leads back into the daily status updates. Again, conditions the team members to use the backlog. As they sit down to prepare this daily update, they're going to think, okay, what did I accomplish today? And again, you're helping them start thinking in terms of accomplishment, business value creating accomplishments. Okay, and what do I need to accomplish tomorrow? Well, that could be daunting, or they could just go, oh, that's right, all this stuff is logged in this Excel spreadsheet up in Teams. Or you know what? It's logged in on a Kanban board in Jira. And so they go and they look and they're kind of like, yeah, this. They write their accomplishments for tomorrow. Here, it won't start that way, by the way. They'll start writing their accomplishments tomorrow, publishing, and then you'll notice that they're not aligned with the backlog. And over time, these two activities will balance themselves out, and your team will start doing this. And eventually, you'll get disciplined and aligned. And then all they've got to do is hit publish. And so I just want to remind you guys, if you're too busy to help your team change, you're not going to get good results. Couple of tools for you guys, as I'd mentioned, to use as a backlog. Google Sheets, free, just like Excel, but it's in the cloud. If you're using Teams and you don't really want to spend any more money than what you're already spending, you can use Excel and you can post that in Teams so everyone can access it. Jira, I love Jira. It's super inexpensive. It's easy to roll out. And then just as another tool, we actually use this at 120 VC because it's more of a robust collaboration tool than Jira. Well, in some cases, Jira is a lot more sophisticated. But Basecamp is also another fairly inexpensive option. So I'm just going to go into the resources that are available to you guys post this webinar. So the first resource is that if you guys have any questions that you'd like me to answer, please email me at jason@120vc.com. Follow us on LinkedIn. Every day at 11 a.m. we post hashtag GS Daily, which for those of you that are conservative stands for Get Stuff Daily. None of this stuff is marketing. It's literally all resources to help anybody leading a team: operations manager, product manager, change manager, project manager, manager, executive. A lot of this stuff is leadership focused, kind of like I hope today you guys were like, well, there was more about leadership than it was about anything else. And again, that's the magic, right? Where you guys have seen waterfall work effectively, agile work effectively. It's all because they were implemented to the right use case and by an effective leader. Because I know you guys have all seen these things fail. So follow us on LinkedIn. We publish stuff every day at 11 a.m. that is just a resource to you. We've got 2 books that are published on Amazon. It's Never Just Business, It's About People is our leadership book. The Irreverent Guide to Project Management. The things that I covered today are in both of those books, in addition to a whole bunch of other more advanced concepts. If you guys feel like this talk would be super relevant to the managers and directors in your organization, I'd be happy to do it at no cost. Schedule another lunch and learn like this for hour and a half with your managers and directors. That would allow me to go much more slowly and to be much more interactive and answer questions. I'd be happy to do it. Just email me. We do have a skills development workshop on this topic and generally leading teams. It's a day long. I'm available to come into your organizations and do that. And for those of you that are unaware, we have a 14-week immersive, all virtual, online, taught by me project leadership program, which again is really for anybody that leads a team. The next one starts 4/22, and you could read all about it at 120vc.com/PLP.